Maxwell Harrington III stared in disbelief at the small wooden box the maid had just placed in his hands. Inside lay a pair of antique hearing aids, not the modern kind, but crude devices from decades past, alongside a yellowed letter. His hands trembled as he read the first line, "To my son, whom I have kept in silence for 25 years. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. His deafness wasn't congenital as he'd been told his entire life. It was deliberately inflicted by his own father, the billionaire tech mogul whose empire he was set to inherit tomorrow. Your father paid millions to keep this hidden," whispered Elena, the family's head maid who had served the Harringtons since before Maxwell was born. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she continued, "He damaged your hearing when you were just a baby. The doctors said it could be reversed, but She couldn't finish. Maxwell felt the world tilting beneath him. Tomorrow was his 25th birthday, the day he would take control of Harrington Industries and its $40 billion fortune. But now he wondered if he even knew the man whose shoes he was meant to fill. What kind of monster would deliberately deafen his own child? The letter explained everything. His father, Maxwell Harrington II, had lost his first wife, Maxwell's mother, to a hereditary condition that caused progressive hearing loss before killing her. Terrified the same fate awaited his son, the elder Harrington had commissioned an experimental procedure to sever the auditory nerves while Maxwell was still an infant. The procedure was meant to be temporary, reversible when a cure was found. But as the years passed, the billionaire had grown to see his son's deafness as an advantage, a shield against the world's distractions and temptations that had ruined so many wealthy heirs. Maxwell's hands shook as he set down the letter. His entire identity had been built around his deafness, the special schools, the years of speech therapy, the way he'd learned to read people's expressions when he couldn't hear their words. He'd even founded a tech startup developing advanced hearing aids, which his father had eventually acquired and incorporated into Harrington Industries. The irony was almost too much to bear. "There's more," Elena said, her dark brown fingers gently turning over the ancient hearing aids. "These belonged to your mother. She designed them herself before she died." The revelation about his mother hit Maxwell even harder than the truth about his father. All his life, he'd been told she died in childbirth, another lie. He examined the crude devices, marveling at their intricate design. According to the letter, his mother had been a brilliant engineer who had nearly perfected a cure for her condition before her death. The hearing aids represented her life's work that his father had buried along with her memory. "Why now?" Maxwell asked, his voice carrying the slight inflection common to those who've never heard themselves speak. "Why tell me this the day before I take control?" Elena's eyes darted nervously toward the door. "Because your father is planning something. The board meeting tomorrow isn't just a formality to transfer power. He's going to announce a merger that will effectively dismantle everything your mother built, including the research division working on hearing restoration technology." Maxwell felt cold determination replace his shock. His father had stolen his hearing, his mother's legacy, and now planned to destroy her life's work. With less than 24 hours before the board meeting, he needed to understand exactly what he was up against, and what his mother had discovered that was worth burying for 25 years. Working through the night in his private lab, Maxwell studied his mother's designs. The technology was decades ahead of its time, incorporating neural interfaces that modern science was only beginning to understand. As dawn broke, he made a stunning discovery: his mother hadn't just been working on hearing restoration. She'd developed technology that could enhance human perception beyond normal limits. The implications were staggering, potentially worth trillions in the right hands, or devastating if weaponized. At 7:30 a.m., as Maxwell was preparing to confront his father, Elena burst into the lab, her face ashen. "He knows," she gasped. "Security is coming for the devices. Your father has called an emergency board meeting for 9 a.m. instead of waiting until tomorrow. He's moving everything up." Maxwell had minutes to decide: flee with his mother's technology or stay and fight for control of the company. The choice was made for him when the lab door exploded inward, armed security flooding the room. As they dragged him away, Maxwell locked eyes with Elena, who nodded almost imperceptibly before slipping his mother's hearing aids into her pocket. Hours later, Maxwell sat in a sterile conference room, facing his father across a gleaming table. Maxwell Harrington too was an imposing figure even at 70, tall, silver-haired, with piercing blue eyes that matched his son's. "You were never supposed to know," the elder Harrington said, his words interpreted by a sign language translator at Maxwell's side. "I did what was necessary to protect you." "From what?" Maxwell demanded. "From hearing? From knowing my mother? From the truth?" "From pain," his father replied, his expression softening momentarily. "Your mother's condition was genetic. The hearing loss was just the beginning. By the time she died, she was in agony every waking moment. I couldn't bear to watch you suffer the same fate." For the first time, Maxwell saw something genuine in his father's eyes, fear. Not for himself, but for his son. "The procedure wasn't meant to be permanent," the older man continued. "But when the doctors told me attempting to reverse it might kill you, I chose your life over your hearing." Maxwell felt his certainty waver. "And mother's research? The technology she developed?" His father's expression hardened again. "Too dangerous. She didn't understand the risks. The neural interfaces she designed, they don't just restore hearing. They create a direct pathway to the brain. In the wrong hands." The boardroom door opened, interrupting their confrontation. Elena entered, followed by a woman Maxwell had never seen before, elderly, with striking white hair and familiar blue eyes. "I believe I can speak to those risks myself," the woman said clearly. Maxwell's father went deathly pale. "Impossible," he whispered. "You're dead." The woman smiled sadly. "Not dead, Maxwell. Just hidden away, like our son's hearing." She turned to the younger Maxwell. "Hello, my darling boy. I'm Elizabeth Harrington, your mother." The revelation that his mother was alive changed everything. Elizabeth Harrington explained how her condition had indeed worsened, but instead of dying, she'd been secretly continuing her research in a private facility funded by her husband. "He thought he was protecting me, protecting both of us, by keeping us apart," she explained. "But isolation isn't protection. It's just another kind of prison." Maxwell's father defended his actions with increasing desperation. The technology was dangerous. The neural interfaces could be weaponized, used to control minds rather than restore hearing. "I couldn't let that happen. So you buried my research and our son's ability to hear instead," Elizabeth replied calmly. "You chose fear over hope." As the confrontation unfolded, Maxwell realized the true stakes weren't just about his hearing or even the company. They were about two fundamentally different views of humanity. His father saw vulnerability and risk where his mother saw potential and possibility. Elena stepped forward, placing the antique hearing aids on the table. "These were just the beginning," she said. Dr. Elizabeth continued her work in secret. She developed this. From her other pocket, she produced a tiny, almost invisible device. A neural interface that doesn't just restore hearing, it connects to the brain's natural healing mechanisms. Elizabeth nodded. "It's not just for hearing loss. The technology could help with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, spinal injuries, any condition where neural pathways are damaged." Maxwell's father lunged for the device, but Maxwell was faster. Their hands collided, sending the tiny interface skittering across the polished table and onto the floor, where it shattered into microscopic fragments. "No," Elizabeth cried, dropping to her knees. That was the only working prototype. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Years of research, potentially life-changing technology for millions, gone in an instant. Maxwell felt a crushing weight of responsibility. His family's dysfunction had just cost the world something precious. But then Elena smiled. "Not the only one," she said quietly, reaching into her pocket once more. "Dr. Elizabeth taught me well. I made a backup." She handed another device to Maxwell. "It's your choice now." Maxwell held the tiny interface in his palm, feeling its almost negligible weight. Such a small thing to carry so much potential, for good or harm. He looked at his father, seeing not a villain but a frightened man who had lost his way trying to protect what he loved. He looked at his mother, brilliant and determined despite years of isolation. And he looked at Elena, loyal not to the Harrington name but to the promise of healing it could bring to the world. "I want to hear," Maxwell said finally. "Not because I need to be fixed, I don't. But because this technology isn't about erasing differences. It's about choices. Everyone deserves the choice my father took from me." Elizabeth stepped forward. "The procedure is simple, but there are risks. The interface connects directly to your neural pathways. If it works, you'll hear for the first time in your adult life. If it doesn't, I understand, Maxwell said. I'm ready. The procedure took less than 5 minutes. Elizabeth placed the tiny device against the skin behind Maxwell's ear, where it seemed to melt into place. For several long moments, nothing happened. Maxwell's father watched with a mixture of fear and hope, while Elena held her breath. Then Maxwell gasped. The world erupted into sound, the hum of the air conditioning, the rustle of clothing, his own heartbeat thundering in his chest. And voices, his mother's gentle tone, Elena's concerned questions, and finally, his father's broken whisper, "I'm sorry." Maxwell heard his father's voice for the first time, and in that moment, understanding bloomed between them. Not forgiveness, that would take time, but recognition of the complex love that had driven his father's misguided choices. 1 month later, Maxwell stood at a podium, addressing the shareholders of Harrington Industries. His mother stood to his right, Elena to his left. His father sat in the front row, diminished but present. Today, we announce the formation of the Harrington Foundation, Maxwell said, his speech clear and confident. Our first initiative will make neural interface technology available to anyone who needs it, regardless of ability to pay. The audience erupted in applause, a sound Maxwell still found overwhelming but increasingly beautiful. As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, he felt a profound sense of purpose. His family's story, with all its pain and redemption, would help millions of others write new endings to their own stories. If this story has touched you, Maxwell concluded, looking directly into the cameras, remember that the most powerful technology isn't in devices or interfaces. It's in our capacity to listen to each other, truly listen, even when it's difficult. That's the connection that changes everything. As he stepped away from the podium, surrounded by the symphony of sounds he was still learning to identify, Maxwell knew his journey was just beginning. The silence that had defined him hadn't been erased, it had been transformed into something more valuable, the ability to bridge worlds that once seemed impossibly far apart.